that it would be very funny that it would be me discussing this with you
Uh,
as a woman who's always advocated for reproductive rights. Like I've been, uh, donating to Planned Parenthood and the Equal Rights Campaign, and I'm the daughter of an immigrant, and I'm gay, like all of the things that would make me be very emotional about this person. But the chart is neutral.
mm.
The chart, in and of itself, is a completely neutral space.
And I so appreciate you doing this with me from coming from that lens. I think is so valuable to just say, yeah, let's do it. And I think that's one of the biggest. I think one of the most beautiful qualities of the projector is it's our aura. It seeks to understand the other person. Like it's so hard for a projector to hate somebody. Like when I was growing up, all the different friend groups like hated each other, and there was all these cliques and rivalries. And I was always the one that was like understanding everybody's position and where they came from. And we all have trauma. We're all damaged in some way. Like we're all insecure and dealing with fear. Like there's just this quality in the projector that really is meant to understand so that we can guide someone back. And even with figures like Donald Trump, there's just this fascination of like, wow, why is he the way that he is? And when I pulled this chart for the first time, and you see like the whole, what Ra has predicted for 2027, which is not like the institutions are going to be saved and healed and fixed.
Mhm.
No, it's that they're crumbling, and that there's going to be a massive change, and they're going to have to really be destroyed in so many ways. So, when I first saw his chart and what the program has planned for us, I just thought like, wow, this is the perfect design to be the catalyst for a lot of chaos and burn it down. He's a 1-3 like me, and we're the anarchist. And I was thinking this morning, like, maybe it would be a even better keynote to say like the arsonist. Like we want to just light it on fire and watch it burn, but we're not necessarily the ones who have the solid plan for moving forward, because I don't think we know what that is. So that's what I really hope people will get from this is like human design's been so healing for me because I can't hate anybody anymore. I can't blame anybody for anything anymore. Like you really can't. And it just makes you realize, like, Ra would also say, if you're designed to be the village asshole, then be the best village asshole you can possibly be. There's just there's room for all of these characters that need to exist in this world, and I just wanted to do this because of the time we're in and what a prominent figure this man is. And looking at his chart, I think could bring a lot of healing for people, and can really be like, okay, hate inside of me is not doing anything for anybody. It really isn't. It's only hurting myself. And I'm super excited to just click on some of these gates, because I was going through the lines and just like, oh my God, your mind's like blown with the distortion. And also sometimes I see like, wow, this is really playing out in his design. So I just want to say thank you for being here and doing this. And I think us doing this hopefully will bring a lot of healing and I don't know, get rid of some. I just don't like people holding on to this stuff. I think is not good. And when you can see that it's all designed and it's all playing out the way it's supposed to, I think that can help. Not to say there's nothing wrong going on, or we see this like there's so much stuff that's backwards. And Ra also talked about that, the rise in this fundamentalist movement and going back to these really old, outdated ways of being, and people being really freaked out about the family and these gender conversations. Well, it's all changing. It's all going away, and this is the last breath. And people get really freaked out. And so I just see a lot of people freaked out on both sides, really.
Well, I think our intention was also to take some of the charge out of it for
Hmm.
people because
Hmm.
it is very charged.
Hmm.
It is like what's happening right now, like it touches everyone.
Yeah.
You know, there's no, I don't think there's anybody who's not being affected by this in one way or
Yeah.
another.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's important to sort of take the temperature down,
Yeah.
because like you said, you being angry and freaked out and railing against the other side isn't really doing anything
Yeah.
to help or heal. And that's what I believe we're here for, as somebody who understands not just the cosmology of what 2027 represents, but
Mm.
who are here to work with people on an individual basis. And,
Hmm.
you know, people come to me for relationship stuff most of the
Yeah.
time, right? And so what I'm constantly trying to teach people is that it's not personal. Like the way that somebody
Yeah.
else is behaving is not
Yeah.
personal. And this is my opportunity to put my money where my mouth is, because it's still not personal.
Yeah. It is crazy how everyone's being affected by this. Like in ways that I wouldn't even comprehend with what's going on in the government now. And like there's so much happening so fast, that it really is like reaching into the whole entire world and all these different sectors you wouldn't think about. And like the change that's happening is really massive. And it's just what a movie. What did it like what's happening? You know?
You can't make this stuff up.
Can't make it up. You just can't make it up. And
I feel
it
like
is
we're going to say that a lot when we're analyzing the chart. You can't make this stuff
can't
up.
make this shit up. All right, should we pull it up and start to take a look? And let's just see where it flows. Like I don't have any structured way to look at it, but I think poking around, like me and you are gonna both have a lot to say, especially with similarities in you guys have a same channel. I've been conditioned by his other channel for the last 3 years, so I think there's a lot to talk about.
Oh, look how fancy that is.
Mr. Trump. He's a 1-3 emotional manifesting generator. Single definition.
Mm.
Okay. Let me get out of interactive, and let's just take a look
Mm.
from a broader perspective, maybe. And you want to just say your design really quick? I'll put it in the notes for sure, but
Sure. So I'm a 6'2" sacral manifesting generator on the left angle cross of Endeavor. This is an endeavor I definitely enjoy. And the channel that I share with Donald Trump is the 2145. We actually also have the same nodes on the design side. Um,
fascinating.
Sorry, and the personality side. They're in
Mm,
different lines, but so in a lot of ways we see things similarly, if you
mm,
will. And I personally believe that the reason why I can see the distortion is because I can see through how he sees in a way.
mm.
So one of the jokes we said was, let's analyze the personality sun gate
All right, let's just
gate 12 line 1, the monk. If you really think about what gate 12 represents and how it's a temperance, it's the gate of caution, meaning caution around how you express
mm,
yourself. And I know from my lived experience, by the way, my view is personal, so I'm always going to take it back
mm,
to my personal experience. Uh, the gate of caution is really about wanting to make sure that an idea, because it's gate 12 coupled with gate 11, right? That your idea is fully baked before you express it publicly. you really want to make sure that something that you're wanting to put into the world on this, because everything in the internet is forever, right? I know that we
Yeah,
cycle through news like crazy, but
yeah.
whatever you put on the internet is
It
forever.
lives. This will
So
live.
I, that's exactly. So my lived experience of having this gate is being very cautious about
Mm,
how I express the ideas that are coming through me, wanting to make sure that they're fully conceptualized
hmm
before I share them, because that's the whole thing about gate 12 is it can come out very blurty and I know it's not the 23, but it can be fumbled, right? Quite easily.
No pun intended.
And
Super
I
Bowl
think we've
yesterday.
seen that fumble many, 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 many
Yeah.
times. So if that's what you're experiencing when you're experiencing watching this unfold on the world stage, that's what you're seeing is a lack of caution, a
Yeah.
lack of working through the idea
Yeah.
before it's fully formed. It's almost like you're watching it in real time and you're like,
Yeah.
is this is this real?
Yeah. The quality of restraint and the importance of meditation and inaction in confronting temptation. Now, how great is Donald Trump at confronting temptation? And this, if we were going to do an analysis for him, we would say the most important thing for you is patience, right? With a design like this, the easiest way to be distorted with this type of design. And I always really feel for emotional manifesting generators because of these different speeds that they have. And he has these two channels that are energy manifested connected to the throat, so it's so easy for him if he doesn't take his time and bake the idea before he speaks, and then he's given access to something like Twitter or Truth Social. It's going to be like, dude, why are you saying the things that you're saying? It might get a reaction, or like it's like comedy sometimes. But when we think about leadership and we think about somebody in the position that he is in, what we would really, I think, enjoy is meditation, is waiting before you say what it is that you're going to say. And what do you think? I really see when I look at politics that the biggest issue for me is lying. Like, to me, it seems like if you're
Mm.
going to be a politician, you just have to lie. And everybody knows you're lying, but no one talks about it just because that's the way that it's gone on for so long. And I think one of the things that people liked about Trump is like some of the stuff he says, there's no way he's lying because you would never say that. Like you like you have like there is a bit of like I'm just gonna blurt out, but I really feel this way, but I'm just gonna say it anyways. Like there's such a lack of any sort of political correctness that can come out of this design that would bring chaos or would bring crisis, I guess, in the 36.
Well, yeah, that's definitely something Ra talked about a lot is that that's a necessary part of being a trickster.
Mm.
The 26 egoist is,
Yeah, let's talk about that.
you know,
His
it,
moon, by the way.
mhm. And that to me is really about trying to speak people's language, the things that people are upset about that hasn't ever really been discussed on the
Mhm.
political stage. And there's this very strange contradiction about him being for the people, meaning he's not a career politician.
Mhm.
He's coming in to clean up the political mess. And yet, he should be technically the most unrelatable character because of his immense
Mm.
privilege that he's enjoyed his entire life. He was born with a silver spoon in his mouth.
Uh-huh.
He's never had to work a menial job or farm or any of these things. And yet he speaks to like
Yeah.
that demographic
Yeah.
on such an amazing level
Yeah.
that it's actually impressive if you think about the contradiction that he's able to sort of circumvent with this unfiltered
Mm.
attitude,
Hmm.
saying things that haven't been said on the political stage maybe ever, or something that the general public has felt on a deep level, and he's finally verbalizing, even if it's not something that the other side wants to hear.
Mm.
What I think he really opened the door for is the understanding that this country lives in two different realities. I told you before we started recording, I've always lived in a blue state. I could not fathom a leader like this with these ideas and this agenda coming into office, because that's just not the reality that I lived in. Everybody lives
Hmm.
in this duality here because this country is so big that we have very different socioeconomic needs, we have very different agendas, we have very different value systems. And he's able to speak to the value systems, even though he is from New York and grew up in this very blue state. He's able to speak to the everyman, if you will.
Sure. Okay, so being a 26, 44, 26 myself, this 26 is the natural salesperson. It's someone who it's the gate of manipulation where you can manipulate memory to sell the tribe on something. So he can be very gifted with this kind of manipulation to speak to other people, and you're meant to exaggerate with this gate. This is, I think, a keynote I see in Trump is he's always saying, which I say all the time too, is this is the best I've ever had. This is the greatest we've ever been. It's always like anything that happens, you just take it to the level of like it's never been as good as it is now. And so this is something that's I really laugh at because I catch myself doing that as a 44 26 where we'll just exaggerate just because, and people I think let it slide because of that ego. And something it says when I was kind of rereading long explanations of these gates is you're a natural salesperson who's actually expected to exaggerate. Your innate ability to manipulate memory coupled with the energy of your ego is designed to withstand rejection. So there's so many lines and gates in this chart where I'm just like, he is really able to feed off of rejection. He's so adaptable with that third line body to really be able to withstand rejection and to get back up and continue to fight. So that's something I really see in this chart is like, you can't, like, the more you hate on him, it's like it almost feeds that ego, because it is such a powerful thing. And then another thing where you're saying he's able to really speak to everybody, we really need to talk about his 59.6 and how extremely powerful this aura is and this channel is and his ability to break down barriers. And my experience with people with this chart, and actually a woman I met with this designer with the 59.6 is you immediately think they love you, or they're into you, or like they want to be intimate with you, or like we're best friends already. Like it's just this energy of like we're close. we're intimate. Like I've got your back, or you're special to me in some sort of way. So don't you see that with Trump? It's like no one's met him, but they just have this kind of like, oh, we're close, or he gets me, or we're supporting each other in some way, because this is again about support.
Well, I did live in New York for 14 years, and I have met people who have known him, and everybody says the same thing. When you're in aura with him, he is charming.
Mm-hmm.
He is, you know, shaking your hand and putting his hand on your shoulder, very tribal
Sure.
touch,
Yeah.
da 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 da. And so that's a lot of how he's gotten to where he is because of those barriers being broken down, and
Mm.
the, you know, fourth line is not part of networking, is not necessarily a keynote because he's not a fourth line,
Yeah.
but there's that sort of intimacy that gets built. And I would say that the distortion of the 59.6 in this case, which is the channel of mating,
Mm-hmm.
mating is about reproduction.
Mm-hmm.
And what I remember hearing is there's no such thing as half pregnant when it comes to this channel, which essentially means that it's very black and white. It is very intimate to be in aura with these people,
Mm-hmm.
but there can be a misunderstanding,
Huge. Yeah.
not just from the person receiving it, but the person who has this channel,
Mm-hmm.
that every relationship is intimate.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, when there is a breach in intimacy, meaning somebody is not loyal
Mm-hmm.
to you in the way that you expect them to be loyal, they're out. It's very black and white. You're either in or you're out. You're either pregnant or you're not.
Mm-hmm.
So we've seen this happen over and over and over again. This person is the best. They're going to be
Yeah.
a part of my cabinet. They're a
Yeah.
part of this project. They're running the show. They're amazing. They're amazing. They're amazing. Something happens. We don't know what happens behind closed doors. Something happens. They're out. Worst guy ever. Got to get rid of him. He's fired. You're fired. Like
Yeah.
it's a done deal. And I think that this is very challenging in business, and obviously in politics, because so much of it is about nuance and details and all of this stuff. And when you live in this black and white, you're either in or out. It's either good or it's bad.
Yeah.
The duality of existence that we are not just experiencing, because like I said, we live in two different realities. It's the perfect demonstration of how duality doesn't work. We're here to recognize that we're actually all one if we're looking at it from a spiritual perspective, but we have to reach the extremes of duality before we can get there. So this is the extreme of duality as I see it through his distorted chart.
So when we talk about this channel, we need to talk about that look at his solar plexus. This is his center of emotion. It is completely defined in red. So this is a completely unconscious emotional system. So he probably does not even consciously understand the impact of his big emotions. It may not even be, apparent to him. Gate 6, which is the gate of conflict and friction, is actually his designed earth. So when we say what that like grounds his body, like friction is like really this this grounding force in his life. In the third line theme is bonds made and broken. you're in or you're out based on his emotions. So, like you were saying, one day you're the best and his ego is so big. If you're loyal, you're in. If you do any little thing and he's not in the mood, you're gone. You're out. And this, I think, goes so well with the maybe the next channel we should talk about is the 3536, because this is all about expectations is the biggest killer for this channel. And coming up with what you think is going to happen, the way you think it's going to go, and then not being able to deliver on those promises, or the experience not going the way you thought it was going to go, and leading to a lot of different crises. So being a 1-3, it's so fascinating that we have a president who's a 1-3. First of all, this is the most self-absorbed profile that you can possibly have, and so I think it's great to caveat with that, because as a 1-3, I was told even early on, like, oh, people think I'm selfish, or people think I'm not. It's so hard with this lens of having both of your profile lines in the lower trigram, where we're just in our own research and development. But when I look at him, I think it saves him a lot of like embarrassment, or like we can be so in our own process that like you can't phase me a lot of the time, like I'll put so much stuff out there just because I don't really even realize, I think a lot of the time, how people are going to take it. Like it's not my purpose really to universalize it, or to have this outside perspective of like, oh, there's people who even exist. It's like, no, I'm doing my research. I'm in my research and development, and it's just the way that it is. It's really hard to see out sometimes.
I love that perspective, Travis, that it's hard to be embarrassed because as a 6'2", I've had like secondhand embarrassment occasionally. Like, did you really just do that? Or did you really just say
Mm,
that? Or just like a face palm, like really? That's
mm,
okay. But the thing that I was actually thinking about in terms of the profile and the 1-3 being so research oriented.
mhm.
Like every single one of my friends or people that I know who are 1-3s are in these careers that require so much detail,
Mm.
so much nuance, so much attention being paid, so much focus being paid to understanding all of the moving parts and all of the various details of something. And that just doesn't seem to be present here. So that's, again, the distortion of, yeah, we're just going to throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah.
There's also, I know that we wanted to talk about the 3536, which is
Yeah, yeah.
very, very important, but the
Yeah.
1762 is
Yeah.
about this very detailed, like conceptualizing
Yeah.
from the ajna to the throat. And all of that just does not seem to be present. How many moving parts does it take to like run a country, much less, whatever organizations and businesses that he's had in the past. It just doesn't, I don't see it. I don't see that like
I think
attention to detail.
I think we're not seeing the monk in the 12-1 still. The time it could be so different. What I really see is like 1-3s also can really get stuck in the study. And sometimes it's
Mm.
like a learn by doing process. And if you put
Mhm.
it on the scale of like, I don't know how to run a country or be the president, but I got elected and now let's see what happens. And really, we're going to trial and error this thing. That's never been done before. And I think that's a really scary thing. And when I look at the 1762, I mean, this is someone who's naturally just opinionated, right? They're in a not self sense can be extremely attached to their own opinions. I'm right and everybody is wrong. And uh, I'm not the most open-minded person, I guess. But definitely the lack of patience and care in the understanding, I guess, could be something we could say is not apparent, and winging. It seems like he's kind of winging the presidency, which is wild.
My my favorite analogy about the 1-3 profile is, you have to hang a TV on the wall, right? So
Yeah,
you watch all the YouTube tutorials,
yeah,
you do your research, and then you throw it all out and do it your way.
yeah,
The third line just needs to get in there.
yeah,
So, but like that's what I'm saying is the research piece of it doesn't seem to be present. It's mostly the winging it and the
yeah,
getting in there,
yeah,
bull in a china shop kind of
yeah,
experience. And listen, there are some unprecedented things that have happened. Like there was no real playbook on how to handle like COVID, for example.
sure.
Could we have had a leader who was more up to that task? Of course we could, but there's we can't look at that and go like, well, you know,
Yeah,
here's how you could have researched how to deal with that.
yeah,
There was no precedent set.
yeah.
So yeah, winging it.
Well, and then we can't, I don't think we could ever lose sight of the context of what's coming in 2027. And and if you're the program and things are really needing to break down so that we can change and do a new way of being, you don't want to send someone in who's going to fix it. You want to send um, someone in who's going to wing it and and have it change in a way that we can't really comprehend. Like what's going to happen to America? What's going to happen to these the global way that we live life? I really don't know. I think there's so much fear just because we don't know what's coming. And someone like Trump, who doesn't really have a playbook, I think is the perfect person to throw in there because I don't think we're fixing anything. And I think so many like hardcore Trump supporters, especially in older generations, think that he's going to be the guy to come in and fix it and to come in and save the country and bring us back to these old, our old glory and, all these kind of outdated ideas. And what I think they don't realize is that's not what's happening here. Like he's coming in to be the bomb that explodes it all, and that's it, and what comes after that we don't really know. But I think that's the distortion on the Trump side of things, is people think he's like this savior who's going to fix things when really it's like we don't know where we're going, and he's going to help us at least get out of this 400-year cycle. This I thought was super fascinating when I looked at his nodes, and maybe you can speak more to the north node here, the prophet. And let's,
I,
let's just read this for a second. This one,
people see him as one, so that's
yeah. But look at what it says: the ability to foresee and plan for the end of standstill, the rousing of the stagnant for communal preparation, the ability to foresee and express the need for social interaction, and an end to caution. This, when I saw this, I was like, whoa, this is kind of wild. What does this mean?
well. What does it mean? What does it mean for any of
I mean,
us?
the rousing of the stagnant, has he not been rousing our stagnant political system, And an end to caution. That's an interesting wording in this gate of caution in
Well,
the
and the
fourth
end to
line.
standstill is what really stands out for me because what is currently happening, in case you don't know, is this incredible speeding up
Mm,
of uh, like procedure. Like one of the things that we have come to understand is that the political red tape is just this endless, you know,
yeah.
standstill, that
Yeah.
the government moves at this snail's
Yeah.
pace. So
Yeah.
the only true change, and this is, you know, because we've been ping ponging back and forth between like,
Yeah.
okay, now we have a Republican president. Okay, now we have a
Yeah.
Democratic president, you know, like back and forth, that
Yeah.
like you spend all of this time trying to move these changes forward just to have them reversed as
Yeah.
soon as a new
Yeah.
administration takes hold.
Yeah.
And so his like lack of standstill is what's really creating chaos,
Mhm.
because what the status quo really has gotten used to
Yeah.
is, hey,
Mm.
like it's going to take a really long time before anything changes. And he gets into office on his first day and
Yeah.
starts like handing down these executive orders, which, by the way, executive orders are designed for like emergency situations. And he's just like, no, I'm going to use these executive orders, carte blanche, 30 of them in one day, because I need things to like move the fuck
Yeah.
along.
Yeah.
Basically, we can't, it is unsustainable to have a government that cannot move anything forward. Now,
Yeah.
whether or not you believe in what he's trying to move forward
Yeah.
is a totally
Yeah.
different story. But to me,
Yeah.
that's where this caution gets thrown to the wind, and
Mm.
we just, the standstill gotta go. Like,
Hmm.
I'm bringing in this person and this person and this
Hmm.
person, and we're gonna get it done.
Yeah.
As in, I come from corporate America, where as the CEO of a company,
Yeah.
I have nobody to answer to. You
Yeah.
know, I don't have a Congress and a Senate that I need to run this
Yeah.
stuff by. Like, I'm playing by my own rules now,
Yeah.
and that's been his MO. So
Mm.
it's not, you may not like the thing that he's trying to push forward, but at least there's that new perception that it doesn't have to take years and years and years to
Mm.
enact these policies, because of the status quo, which
Yeah.
is what he says he's here to
Yeah. And
get rid of, bulldoze through, however
yeah.
you see it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a fascinating point in this like polarity between standstill and ending the standstill. Um, and I think what so many people are depending on what side you're on, or I don't even think it matters. I think we could all agree that our government is extremely like it's the red tape and the fact that we ping pong and nothing really ever seems to get done. I think a lot of people would agree with that, regardless. Can you talk a bit about your 2145? And I just want to, the cycle that we've been in for the last 400 years, the channel that's defined in that frequency is the 3740. It's a very tribal age that we've been living in, and the final expression of that is the 2145, where it makes it up to the throat, and this is the tribal leader here in gate 45, which is interesting to see that he's made it there, but he was also born into this this tribal hierarchy as well. And this is also the channel of like the have and the have-nots, right? Like the 45s up at the very top, they're like the rich ones, like they have a lot. And it's interesting to see that he's brought in Elon, and the people that he deals with are all these extremely wealthy billionaire people who have. Like this is, and is this the final way that it crumbles? Is thinking like that? This is, here's the final expression. Here's the last. This is really what we get to see, I think, is that this way of living created people that have enormous amounts of wealth and created so many people who have nothing. And there's the people
Mm.
who succeed, and there's the people who don't succeed. And there's all of these hierarchies that have happened. And from my point of view, it's like now we get to see the final expression where the billionaires made it into the White House, and the people who have finally made it. And it's so obvious to people who haven't reached that level, that they're not going to. And
Mm.
I don't know. It just seems like the last 2 years, this might be the final expression that we get to witness of what this whole thing was about, which is, those who don't have are in service to those who have, and the wealth gap just keeps
Mm,
getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
mm. Oh gosh. Okay, so just so
Wow.
you know, I feel like I could spend hours just on this.
Mm.
The channel of money
Yep.
is my only conscious channel, or only fully conscious channel, and it is, let's just remember that Ra named these channels. So it
Yeah.
wasn't the forces who called this the channel of money, it was
Yeah.
Ra. And it's a misnomer because the tribal ruler is technically designed to be somebody who collects the resources for the purposes of redistribution and education. Because we know that education is the thing that keeps the tribe the
Yeah.
healthiest. And we can see that America as a tribe is very disjointed and dysfunctional, but we're also not very healthy.
Yeah.
And one of the ways in which we
Mm.
are keeping people unhealthy is through lack of education. So I don't see this changing anytime
Mm.
soon. In fact, there's, like quotes from him saying like, I'm for the uneducated, like, I love the uneducated, that's my demographic, which is like potentially stuff that gets buried because there's so
Yeah, I don't
many
know what
other
that means.
things that he says that are so outrageous. But
I saw.
in this case, it's not about collecting the resources for America. It's about collecting the resources for his tribe, meaning his family, meaning who he is surrounded by. Because when you're the tribal ruler, your tribe is the best tribe. Your tribe needs to have the best stuff. So that's why there's so much nepotism, wherein all of these people in his family who are completely unqualified for various positions are getting put in these various positions because it's kind of mob mentality. Like, I just need people I trust, people who
Hmm.
are loyal to me, people who are going to do as I say, not as I do, because that's the other sort of distortion of the 2145 is
Mm.
like, oh, the rules don't apply to me. Like, they should apply to you. They should not
Mm.
apply to me. And there's like not snubbing your nose down at people necessarily, but just feeling like there's something that you deserve, which is, you know, there's a reason why politicians are called public servants,
Yeah.
because they are here to technically serve the people, which we have come to see is not the case at all.
Yeah.
They have served themselves really well.
Yeah.
Um, every politician is in one corporation's pocket or another
Yeah.
based on whatever their agenda is.
Sure.
So that's what it's really pulling the curtain, like, because we've been in this political system believing that the political system works,
Yeah.
and what 2027 represents, or what leading up to 2027 represents, is the veil being pulled back
Yeah.
in every
Yeah.
circumstance, being like, nope, that's not what's really happening
Yeah.
here. Like,
Yeah.
Oz is not a wizard. He has,
Yeah.
all of his like little pulleys and the smoke and mirrors that we live in. Like, we cannot deny the truth anymore. The
Yeah.
truth being that this is not a system that works for the people.
Yeah.
This we the people thing is not
Yeah.
working. And there are people who are going to cling to the illusion.
Yeah.
As you said, there are going to be people who will cling to the old ways because it feels safe,
Yeah.
it feels good. I can't even tell you how many times I got annoyed in 2020 when everybody was like, when we go back to normal. I was
Yeah.
like, no, guys, we're not going back. We can't put the genie back in the bottle. We can't shove the skeletons back in the closet. There's no going back. And so this expression of the tribal ruler through this chart specifically is showing us that the the money system or the systems that are in place are the ones creating this wide gap.
Yeah.
They are the ones creating this incredible discrepancy between the haves and the
Yeah.
have-nots.
Yeah.
And I remember a quote a long time ago that, the next world war isn't going to be like an actual war, and it's not going to be between countries. It's going to be between the haves and the have-nots.
Mm.
Because if you think about the French Revolution, it was like the revolt against the aristocracy. It was just, we
Yeah.
cannot have these kings sitting on their thrones, like eating bonbons all day while the
Yeah.
people starve.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Design of a materialist, the ability to, with his willpower, manifest the control of his ego. In this gate 21, biting through the justified and necessary use of power and overcoming deliberate and persistent interference. I'm a 21 as well, in a different line, unfortunately. I don't like my line at all. But the willpower of the and ego to ensure respect. So we were already kind of talking about this. Hey, if you respect me, you're in. The second you don't, and I'm in a mood, you're out. So another interesting thing that Ra predicted was that when we are moving towards this 2027 marker, and we're going to start to see the breakdown of our institutions, he was always really worried about the people who didn't have and the people who were hanging on by a thread, really at the mercy of these nonprofits and these NGOs to provide their basic necessities for living, which is food and water. And we can see recently with the uncovering of possible corruption in these government agencies and the full stop of them, NGOs, nonprofits who are not going to receive the funding that they need to feed people in third world countries or people who are in need of welfare. And if you were saying that the next world war is really going to be between the have and the have-nots, like what happens when people who have been relying on government systems to feed them goes away and they don't have food? That's a recipe for, you can use your own imagination there. But that's a really scary thing when I think someone at the very top is so blind and distorted to struggle of someone who does not have material, because the tribe is all about having enough material. What's going to happen when it runs out?
Well, and I also don't want to sit here and be like fear mongering in this other way. So I just want to say that there's always going to be somebody who wants to have an actual solution, right? There are people out there who are already working on the solution to this
Hmm.
incredibly widespread and kind of daunting issue. However, it's it's that we can't look to the institutions that we're used to looking to, right?
Yeah.
Like we can't look at the government and go like, that's who's going to save me, or
Yeah.
like that's who's going to come up with the solve for this problem.
Hmm.
It's going to be all of us getting very scrappy and very involved and being much less reliant on those
Hmm.
old paradigms, because we have seen behind the curtain and
Yeah.
gone like, oh, like that doesn't work.
Yeah.
I think a really amazing and beautiful example of this is what was going on during COVID. You know, whether or not you believe that we were supposed to be wearing masks, whether or not like any of those things, there was a mask shortage. There was also a ventilator shortage
Mm.
because you know, the
Yeah.
the trading routes were interrupted,
Yeah.
and we were far too reliant on the trade
Mm.
with China in order to have these things. So what did people do? They started sewing masks in their garages. What did people do? They figured out how to build ventilators out of like, you know, materials that they could find at any hardware store. So it was like all of those people getting super scrappy and
Mm.
coming together in this emergency, whether or not you believe that COVID was the level of emergency that they made it or not is
Yeah.
at this point, besides the point. It was that there was something that needed to be solved, and people, everyday
Yeah.
people, solved
Yeah.
those problems.
Mm.
So for us to like see the hierarchy as no longer the
Yeah.
solving of
Solution.
our problems
Hmm.
and the looking, I mean, obviously on a spiritual level, we're here to look inward, right? Not try to figure out how to change everyone else around us. We're here to look inward for a new perspective. But also, this means that we're probably going to get a lot more grassroots as we get closer and closer to 2027, because
Mm.
we're going to see, like, hey, we need to come together. Like, I live in a very small community in Northern California. Like, I know all the people who are growing their own food on like a larger
Hmm.
scale, and that might be necessary come very, very soon. And that is you know, my house is on a well. I don't rely on the city for my water. Like all sorts of things are coming through that aren't necessarily anything I thought I'd have to worry about in my
Yeah.
lifetime, because I was just assuming that the trade routes were just going to continue and the
Yeah.
government was just going to keep funding agriculture and da da
Yeah.
da da da. Like, mm, you
Nope.
know, I have some contingency plans in place. I'm not a prepper. I don't have like
Yeah.
ammo and stored canned food, and I haven't learned how to can anything. But
Mm.
these are the kinds of things that you're going to start seeing
Yeah.
people thinking about, like creating more accessibility to things so that we're not so reliant on the old ways and
Yeah.
assuming that they're going to keep working the way that they did.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is why I think human design is such a gift. Because when we've learned about 2027, like we've heard Ra's predictions, and then you can actually look out into the world and watch it kind of start to play out, and you're like, wow, this is all, nothing's wrong here. This is planned. This is the next step in our evolution. This is just the way that it's unfolding. But just being informed and aware of it has given me so much. More peace and an ability to just watch the movie. Ra always said, like, just to watch this stuff play out. It is really fascinating, and one of the things he would also always say is that the truths will be revealed before 2027. He's like, you're gonna
Mm-hmm.
see all of the stuff going on behind the curtain. And it's been interesting for me to really just inspirational to think about these things of like, wow, COVID was definitely meant to happen. Like it was so planned. Like no one knew. If you were in human design before COVID, everyone's like, how's this whole 2027 thing going to happen? There's no way the world's going to change that fast. And then bam, that happens. And you're like, holy shit, okay, maybe it can change. And, now with Trump and in the presidency again, you're like, how are these government institutions going to break down? Bam, here comes Trump again. It's like, whoa, okay, this really can happen. And like you said earlier, it's this speeding up. Um, and having human design as a tool to uh, view it with is just been like so healing. And so like taking the pressure off and the feeling like I'm going to change any of this, like I just
Mm,
need to be angrier. I need to fight more against this. Like I'm
mm,
going to change it. It's like, oosh. Um, no, it's just going to be different. And then if we talk about the 3536, which is a really interesting one because this is the Human Design New Year forecast. This was one of the definitions it carried was the 3536, and this is the channel of transitoriness. Gate 36 is this gate of emotional crisis manifested in the 35, which is this gate of change. Could have progress. We don't know. But this is just like no matter what happens, it's going to be different after it happens. And we're going to see a lot of chaos. We're going to see a lot of emotional outbursts. We're going to see a lot of drama based on high expectation and desire for something new. And how it's going to play out, we won't really know until it's over. And we can look back and be like, this is the reason why it had to happen this way. And that's, I think, something that's so healing with this energy is like after the fact, we can really understand, wow, that's the reason why it had to happen that way. And this is what we learned from it.
mm.
But Trump can bring this energy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I feel like to add to what you were saying about knowing about human design and being super grateful, like daily, that I've known about 2027. But I feel like people who are just coming into design, when they're coming to me for, you know, analysis, and then they hear about 2027, and it's like a little bit, you know,
Yeah.
disconcerting. Like,
Yeah. I
what does
remember the
this mean?
I remember the first time in human design where I heard about 2027 and I had this shock of like, what did I get myself into? Like, I don't want to be a part of a system that has like a date, like everyone with the
Oh,
date.
yeah.
I'm always like, no, 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 don't. This date is bullshit. So I remember the first time I heard about it and was like a little bit like, should I not be into this thing? But then after researching and studying, you're like, oh wow, okay, this isn't another system
Well,
with a date.
so I have a session that I call the mystical pep talk, which
Cool.
is truly just like talking you off a ledge if you need
Mm,
that kind of support, because I'm still very tribal, very supportive, and
cool.
I feel like what really it comes down to, as we're talking about how like institutions are falling apart and not relying on that so much, it's also on about understanding that it's about the rise of the individual.
Mhm.
So it, it's interesting to see that there's not really a lot of
Mm,
individual chemistry in this chart. It's very
interesting.
tribal and it's
Yeah.
very collective.
Mm,
But the rise of the individual means that why human design was brought to us, why
mm.
the fates gifted us this system or wanted us to have this system, is because
Wow.
it's about understanding that you have everything within you
Mm,
to keep you safe. You know better than anyone else what is correct for you.
mm.
And that's why knowing your human design is so valuable, because you always have like this center point
Yeah.
to return back to.
Yeah.
When the chaos is too loud,
Mhm.
when the talking heads are telling you about how
Yeah.
everything's terrible and falling apart, you have a
Mm,
way to recenter
mm.
and learn. And so that's why, like,
Wow.
that whole like date and the cultiness
Yeah.
of like the end times and all of that is kind of like, I get it. It is a red flag, but
Yeah.
at the same time, there is this like, that's why I'm so passionate about the system. It's not just like how do we, trust ourselves and have better relationships and all of that
Mm.
stuff. It's about like how do you stay safe in a
Yeah.
world that's
Insane.
like
Yeah. Yeah. How do you stay sane? I think is really what it's been for me. And Ra's quote is always, those who the gods want to destroy make them crazy first. Like they make you go insane
mm,
because you can't keep your sanity when you're caught up in the movie and the collective. That's such a fascinating point about Trump's chart. He has three individual activations. That's super fascinating. So this is someone I think who Ra would say is not a mystical person by any means, who has never had a mystical experience or is connected to that realm. If we looked at it in terms of the mystical way, and then if we look at his tribal activations, this is like bringing control. Like he's going to be in control of his tribe now. And the 3536 is like, this is bringing crisis to the collective. This is going to bring massive change in a maybe a very emotional, a very dramatic sort of way. So yeah, that's interesting. I never noticed that keynote that he has missing these individual activations.
And the thing is that, the individual is
Mhm.
inherently selfish, right? Because it
Mhm.
takes selfishness to survive, but you're seeing tribal and collective
Mm.
selfishness through this distortion. And that means hoarding resources. That's like what it means to be tribally selfish. Um, Feeling like, you're squirreling away for just your tribe to be safe when you're that it's about being able to universalize as a collective being and understanding that you know um, the United States, for better or for worse, is a country that the entire world looks to. And I know that because I am not from this country originally,
Mm.
and I have traveled all over the world. And the United States
Mm.
is as much world news. Like whatever
Sure.
happens in this country is world news because of the status that it has reached in a very short period of time,
Sure.
right? The United States has only existed in the cross of planning, which is the cross that is coming to a close in 2027. And so it's like we're this flash in the pan, this great
Mm.
experiment in the grand scheme of things to
Yeah.
see if a country like this could actually be the world leader or the I don't even know
Yeah.
if world leader is correct, but more like the role model.
Sure. Or
Could the United States be the role model for the rest of the world? And I
yeah.
think the answer is no.
Well, I think in terms of cross of planning, it's a yes. I
Mm.
really think like if what was the purpose of this? It was to create institutions to have people sacrifice themselves for the greater whole so that we can have this massive population explosion. And Ra always says that the program doesn't give a shit about your happiness, your individual health and well-being. We're just in this genetic program that's always evolving. So when I look at America, it is the pinnacle of the cross of planning. It had all the resources. It has it is the global leader in so many ways, but not when we're talking about our in terms of individual being healthy or empowered. No, it's about how many individuals in America sacrifice themselves every day to go to their job and work for these institutions that are building these structures that support this cross or whatever era we've been in. And I think that's why we're finally seeing like, wait a second, why is America the number one? But their people are like not happy and their people are really sick and their people are like depression and anxious and all these other things. Well, I really think that the cross of planning it does not care if you're anxious. It doesn't care if you're depressed. It doesn't care if you're unhealthy. It was just about creating enough material to support a massive, massive population of people. Uh,
And this when I talk about the veils kind of being
mhm.
lifted and the truth kind of coming to the surface, we were Pluto was in a 61 transit for 3 years starting in 2020 or something like that. And
Yeah.
so it was really about seeing the
Mm.
dark underbelly of the institutions and how it was really fragile, because
Yeah.
that's truly what it means for
Yeah.
it to be ending, is that it was fragile.
So
It was not
fragile.
a
Yeah.
sustainable model. It was not
Yeah.
a, again, like if it was, then we would all be
Yeah.
happy and healthy
Yeah.
and mentally well and all of those different things.
Yeah.
Uh, and what we're coming to terms with is that it's not sustainable, is
Yeah.
that there is no winning when so many people are losing.
Yeah.
And when the discrepancy is getting wider and wider and wider, because there was a time where everybody, like a very short window of time, when it felt like everybody was thriving
Hmm.
because we were blind to
Hmm.
who wasn't.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people look at the 80s and the 90s, for
Yeah.
example, from a political standpoint and also from an economic standpoint, as like this golden era.
Sure.
The Reagan years and the Clinton years, like,
Yeah.
even though it was like still totally a mess,
Yeah.
uh, and wanting
Ignorance is
to
bliss.
reclaim those
Yeah.
times
Yeah.
when it felt possible, for the American dream, which is
Yeah.
based on the idea of meritocracy and upward mobility.
Hmm.
Never has there ever been a time in human history where it was so possible to improve your
Sure.
socioeconomic situation.
Yeah.
So to see this American dream crumble,
Mm.
I can understand why that's really difficult for people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true about just being blind and then being shown the truth, and that alone being an interesting thing to think about is like this system was never meant to be sustainable. If you look at the program, and it's fun for me to look at like what triggers were built into the system to cause its own downfall at the end of it. Like it had an expiration date. It was almost like a ticking time bomb was placed into the system when it started, that would be ready to go off now and bring the next sort of change in. So that's really fascinating to look at these different mechanisms that are actually now helping its downfall, which I think is the discrepancy between the have and the have-nots. Again, you can't afford anything anymore. People are starting to ask questions. That was one thing that older generations never did. They never asked any questions because they could afford a house. They could have a job. Everything was good. They can go out to dinner and they could have a quality of life that was comfortable and was normal and then fit in, and it was like, okay, life was pretty good. But then come, after like 86 or 87, now we're being growing up in a generation where we're kind of stuck in between these things, and we're starting to see things a little bit different. We're starting to ask certain questions. Now generations, it's like, why is nothing working? Like you can't, you're in an insane amount of student debt. It's like everything has turned you into a product to be sold or to be taken advantage of. And I look at kids nowadays and it's like, Jesus Christ, from the time they have a phone, they're already being turned into a product, on social media. Then they go to school and it's like, wow, these loan companies are just taking advantage of them to make money off of these kids. And then you graduate, you can't even get a job. A lot of the times it's like all the competition, and now you can't afford a house, and it's like the comfort level is gone, and the quality of life for young people is it isn't what it was in our parents' generations, and that just naturally makes you start to ask questions of why isn't it working for us anymore. And if we look at the design sun of Donald Trump's chart, it's gate 36, the darkening of the light. And this is really interesting. The rules of cycles, in which decline is a natural but not enduring stage. So again, is this not like his biggest energy of this body is like decline? the darkening of the light. The cycle is over. The cycle is ending. And in the third line, which I think this could give us maybe a little bit of hope, is transition and adaptability and being able to go through a decline and through something that doesn't work and being able to stand up again and say, okay, well, what does? We learned our lessons. How can we move into a better future, which is gate 35, not necessarily in a logical sense, but what is the darkening of the light? What is the ending of this cycle going to bring us?
Mm.
And this
Yeah,
is
and one of the things is it's like where do you even focus the energy? You know, where do you even focus, like which crisis do you even start with?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
there's almost too many to count. So
yeah.
if it's
Hmm.
if it's not wanting the government to move so slowly, but like the price of eggs is through
Yeah,
the
yeah,
it's just
yeah. There's
it's like
so much coming
spinning
at us.
these plates and
Yeah,
trying to figure out where the root of the problem is,
hmm.
but that's
Yeah, yeah.
is that even
That's
going to happen?
interesting.
Is it possible? The
Yeah,
One of the things that we were discussing in the Beehive, which is my online community for women, for those who don't know, and you were a guest there, which was
uh,
wonderful. I loved having
that was
you.
an amazing experience.
Um, One of the things that we discuss quite frequently is that not only was 2027 predicted as this, changing of the guard, but it was also the rise of the yin,
Hmm.
right? So what we're talking about is still applying masculine principles to problem solving,
Hmm.
where what so many women inherently know is that the the masculine way is what's falling apart, even if you don't like consciously know that.
Yeah,
To understand that we need a much more feminine touch when it comes to trying to
yeah.
move through these problems
Well, maybe
is
I think maybe even uh, the discrepancy here is that men aren't attached to cycles in a similar way. Like I think what I see in Trump is like he doesn't even realize the cycle is ending. We don't understand that life. You go through a cycle of life. I think women are so much obviously more connected to the fact that we go through cycles and there isn't such thing as exponential growth that never dies. There isn't such thing as like what we see in companies in the cross of planning. It's like if you're not growing, you're dying. Every year has to be exponentially better than the last, and that's not a realistic principle that we find in nature. We are cyclical creatures living this life where we end up dying at some point. And this is really interesting in his 36, Jupiter in detriment, the embrace of change, but with feelings that will not let go of the past.
you can't make this shit
You can't make
up.
it up. It's like, wow, he's such a explosive, sensitive, emotional being, and it's all thinking that it's the past is going to come back. We're going to go back to our golden age. What
But
else do you see
if
about
you
the
think
rise of the
about
feminine?
well, if you think about what you just said, is that he has a very sensitive chart.
Hmm.
Does he present as a person who is sensitive? No,
Yeah,
because sensitivity is seen as weakness,
yeah.
whereas women know that sensitivity is a superpower.
Mm.
Sensitivity is absolutely not your weakness. In
Yeah.
fact, I feel like first of all, I'm in my like I just crossed the threshold of my seventh year, so I feel like I've clicked into a new cycle of my own as far as this deconditioning process is concerned, and I find myself being so much more sensitive and tuned
Yeah.
in to the collective. Like I cry like every single day, like not in a bad way, you know,
Yeah.
I'm, you know, like our perception is like crying equals bad, but
Yeah.
like for me, it's more just, I need to be able to release all of this stuff that's constantly
Yeah.
filtering through me because we are all filtering whatever the collective is experiencing. And the collective is experiencing a crisis of conscience, a crisis of awareness, a quickening into this new reality that we're constantly trying to. Oh, this is a new reality. Gotta get used to that. Oh, now
Yeah.
it's a whole other reality. Gotta
Yeah.
get used to that. So, this idea that emotionality,
Yeah.
sensitivity, you know, being in tune with the world at large is a
Mm.
weakness is what is inherently falling away. And that's where
Yeah.
women are going to rise as far as a whole other kind of leadership. Like there
Mm.
needs to be a whole
Mm-hmm.
restructuring in our consciousness what leadership means,
Mm-hmm.
which is not hierarchical.
Yeah.
It's expansive. It's understanding the players and seeing how resources can be distributed in
Mm-hmm.
a way that's much more functional for everyone. Because what I think is really causing this like mental health crisis
Mm-hmm.
for so many people, especially in this country wherein we were promised that we were going
Yeah.
to be able to elevate, is this like constant stress of not being able to keep up,
Yeah. Sure.
this constant stress of like, I need more. The mind just wants
Yeah.
more and more and more and more. And
Yeah.
it's, I'm not immune to this,
Yeah.
right? Like, I am a materialist. I
Mm-hmm.
am somebody who likes the creature comforts of
Mm-hmm.
life. I'm not immune to wanting those things, but to understand that this constant seeking of more
Yeah.
is what's causing this cognitive dissonance and
Mm-hmm.
this crisis within our consciousness is what I feel more and more women are
Mm.
recognizing. And that's not to say that we are not ambitious, that we don't
Mm-hmm.
have, you know, things that we want to accomplish in our
Yeah.
lives. I'm a very ambitious person. I, as a manifesting generator, would like to have a big impact on this world. And if I can leave behind just one thing, I
Mm-hmm.
hope that it would be to empower women, not just through human design, but through like the the principles that I feel all of the spiritual practices have given me.
Mm.
Because I feel like we need to be able to layer those things together in
Sure.
order to really see the bigger picture of where like humanity is going, which is that we are ascending in consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
That's it's undeniable at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that 2027 didn't really address because it was brought through a masculine form, which is fine. You know, like we needed Ra. Ra was the perfect messenger. And now it's time to, you know, see the principles that were laid out through this system, see the future through a lens of possibility and not just destruction.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding that what has gotten us here is a very masculine principle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's time for a feminine principle. That's why I guess internally I felt very optimistic in 2016 about having a female president, and having those hopes dashed in such a
Uh,
violent way at the time left me feeling really disempowered. And it was truly human design that helped me reclaim that power
mm,
to say, like, yeah, it is time for us to stop letting these institutions tell
mhm.
us who we needed to be. And even modern feminism like
Yeah,
failed us to some degree because
sure.
it was like a very masculine
Yeah.
like
Well,
overcorrection.
yeah. Yeah, I hear all of that, and Roz talks so much about the human design. He says is a yin system, and I think a lot of people uh, would say like, oh, it came through raw, so therefore it's a masculine system, and it's so not. Like he always talks about like this is about the wisdom of your body. Most people are sacral beings, which is about the womb in women. Like, and I really think this is why even in 2016, if a woman won, like it wouldn't have fixed this system. It would have still been extremely masculine. So it just has to crumble. There's no fixing it. A new way is coming. And it is interesting that the mutation that's taking place is in our solar plexus, which is our center of emotions, which is the spirit, which can be extremely sensitive over here. And there is a new consciousness that's being born, and we can see it already. My sister sent me the other day this podcast, I think, called the Telepathy tapes. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's
Cool.
already talking about it's interviewing a bunch of parents about their children who seem to be like autistic and nonverbal, but can literally read their minds. And they talk to these kids, and the kids are like, oh yeah, my best friend is so and so, and they're like, you don't know anybody by that name. And then they will meet them like states away, and the kids are like going to these different places to hang out with each other. That is like completely like telepathic, which is something Ra has predicted. And she sent it to me instantly because she was like, dude, this is literally sounds like what you were telling me about with Ra. So we can see this new consciousness, I think, already creeping into the world that has so much more to do with this conscious relating with each other in a more sensitive way that doesn't have to do with this survival that we're all seemingly stuck in this extremely masculine system that's disconnected from from anything to do with a cycle or patience, I guess. And in the 59.6, I heard someone say something about this channel once that was really beautiful, and they said that you can only be as intimate and authentic with other people as you've been with yourself. Like this channel is always an invitation first to go inside and be intimate with who you are, which is, can you get in touch with your feelings? Can you get in touch with the hurt and the trauma that you've been through in your life? Do you have a safe space to express where someone can hold that for you and you can heal it? And you look at someone like Trump in that generation, and it's like, of course not. Of course not. You don't feel. You're a businessman. There is no emotions in business. Ha! Isn't that the funniest? I think that's the funniest thing I've ever heard is like people saying that there is no emotions. It's just business. And you're like, do you realize how tribal and emotional this is? So I really completely agree with this feeling of like this is the time where we realize these masculine institutions aren't working, and it is the rise of the yin. It is the rise of the power that inherently lives in the feminine form. And Ra talks about also like, hey, masculine is just a mutation of the feminine. We literally don't exist where you are kind of the where it all comes from, the mystery of life and the ability to create more. And there's so much magic that lives in there. And I'm kind of rambling, but just the last point I want to make about the anxiety and depression and what we are seeing in our young people. I agree, and I also really think that it's our inability to be intimate and authentic and express leadership in a way that carries like this truth that we don't know what's coming and we don't know what's next. And when we're lying to our kids saying we're going to fix these old systems, just keep doing what you're doing, go to college, get your degree, the American dream is still possible for you. It's not. It's so obvious that it's not. And I think this is kids are so aware that nothing is working. And when you have people in these leadership positions saying like it's everything's going to be okay, we're just going to do it like we used to do it. I think that's where kids can get so fucked up of like, dude, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know where we're going. Like I can't be lied to anymore. This isn't working. You keep telling me, and this is all politicians, like you keep telling me like it's okay. You keep telling me that things are good, but my lived experience is like that it's chaos and that it's not good. So like you're telling me these things is making me feel crazy, or either you're full of shit and you're lying to me. And either option is not good.
Well, and hasn't it historically been up to the youth
Yes.
to revolt and
Yeah, always.
stand up and say, like, we're not just going to go to some random war across the world because
Yeah.
you think that we need to control that
Yeah.
political system. Or,
Yeah.
like, we're not just going to, like, fill in the blank.
Yeah.
We're not even going to adhere to your standards of, gender anymore.
Yeah.
Like, we're done with that.
Yeah.
We're over these boxes that you've been
Yeah.
trying to put us in, including male and female,
Yeah.
right? Because that's still a duality. And when duality is over, that's when the oneness of this beautiful, non-linear, non-conformist experience can actually happen. So one of the things that human design sort of promises, if you will, is that if you follow your strategy and honor your inner authority, then along the way you will decondition, right? You will butt up against all of those conditioning factors that have kept you in your, I don't know, the comfort zone, in this box and this whatever, and you will unravel those over, let's say, at the course of 7 years. I believe it's for the rest of your life, but it's the 7 years is the most pivotal time of unraveling those things. And once you've gotten through those layers of conditioning, you start to see, like, not just your own conditioning, you see how we've been conditioned by the program on a bigger scale. And at first it's a little scary.
Yeah.
It's a little frightening to see just how upside down and backwards things have been and continue to be on some level. But then I see this next generation coming up right behind me who are all like almost like immune to this program. They're like, we don't want any part of what I see you guys having to unravel. Because what the millennial generation is unraveling is that there are all these promises made for, if we check off all these boxes and if we fall in line, then the program will take care of us.
Yeah.
And it hasn't.
Yeah.
And because it hasn't, we're depressed and scared and da-da-da-da-da. And that's why most of my clients are millennials, because we're all in this together, right? And I'm just a few steps ahead in the deconditioning process. And I can remember when I was where you are in the deconditioning process. And I'm actually writing a book about this because I feel like we all need a little hand-holding throughout this crisis of identity in a lot of ways, as having been in this generation. But the generation right behind us, they did not buy into any of this. They did not drink that Kool-Aid. And so I'm actually less worried for them. It's like, they grew up with the internet and social media and phones and all of that stuff, but they didn't look at our lives and go like, I want to copy paste that. No, I'm good.
Yeah.
And they're going to do it their own way, which is phenomenal. It's
Sure.
absolutely phenomenal to watch. And that's why I'm not ultimately scared, because
Hmm.
we're going to get scrappy when we need to.
Hmm.
We're going to trust ourselves because we know what's best for us on like a biological level.
Hmm.
And we're going to have a whole generation coming up behind us who aren't trying to go back to the old ways.
Hmm.
We're caught in between. That's why it's so difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're this in between sort of generation that's like, do we, do we
Yeah.
not, are we try?
It's like
It's
in between a
ambiguous.
promise that doesn't work anymore and the complete unknown.
Yeah,
Which one are you going to take? It's easy to see why people would
absolutely.
cling and other people are like, whoa, fuck, the unknown is really scary, but I guess this is where we're going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so God, there's so much more. We should do this again and maybe not so much focus on Trump, but I really want to talk about the gender conversation because human design does say a lot of really interesting things about how our gender is changing from this polarity, and it just explains so much of what's going on the world stage. And for me, I really, it's just again so great to be able to look at both sides who are like really hating each other and fighting each other, and to be able to understand where both people are coming from. I think the people who are so obsessed with this gender polarity in the family, they're really just so scared that it's going away, that religion's gone in 2027. If you want human design's prediction, this old way of life is going away, and they're so in fear. And so they lash out with these fundamentalist things. Okay, whatever. And then there's the other people who are like, this is who I am. This is really what it feels like inside of me. I don't identify with man or woman anymore. And it's like, okay, yeah, this is definitely what's coming, this new way of life. So it's just such again, back to why the hell did we want to even look at Donald Trump's chart? To me, it's like we're at the end of a cycle. This is the wrecking ball that's going to come in and deliver the crumbling that needs to happen. And it's no one's fault. It's just the way it's been programmed, and we all have to live through it. And like you said, with human design, we can really start to feel into ourselves, trust ourselves, align with who we are, and not let anybody else tell us what's best for us or how we need to do things. And we're going to do it our own way. And with the rise of the individual and the rise of the feminine and realizing that we're not going to fix the systems, but we need to come up with a very new possibility for life, and what's going to come. So it's
Yeah, and just to be clear, what human design says is that religion as an institution is not going to have
yeah,
its, prominent
sacrificing thing.
seat
Yeah.
sacrificing, or the guilt or the fear or the shame
Control.
that comes along with all of those things. But I think that there is, or I see that there is, a huge rise in spirituality
Sure.
and understanding the interconnectedness of all of us,
Yeah.
that we are all like sparks of source, that
Yeah.
we all have much more interdependent
Hmm.
consciousness than we think.
Hmm.
And that even as an individual, you have the power to influence the vibration of the people around you
Sure.
and even expand further out than that,
Sure.
right? Because as we ascend, as we raise our own consciousness, it is being felt
Yep.
globally. It
Yeah.
has a ripple effect.
Yeah.
And for Ra to say that only 4% of 4% are going to wake up, like that just means that 4% of 4% will maybe get human design, but that doesn't mean that
Yeah.
it's only 4% of 4% of people, you know,
Yeah. Affected by, yeah, I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
like going from this 3D paradigm that is all very
Yeah.
dualistic, it's all about good and evil and right and wrong, to the everything of all,
Mm.
wherein it's in the fifth dimension, everything is love. Everything is creation. Like nothing can be destroyed. And if you think about it from that perspective, it's not even crumbling, it's just shifting into a new reality. So, that to me has felt like a much more true and honest experience of it, because that's what the yin brings in, right? The masculine says it's being destroyed.
Hmm.
The feminine says, no, we're just moving into a new form.
Yeah.
Something new is being born. And we're just flowing as we do through a new cycle.
Yeah.
That's all that we're experiencing. You can have an experience in which that is traumatic and hard and terrifying, or you can have an
Yeah.
experience where it feels exciting and new and
Yeah.
fascinating, and that feels better for me.
Yeah.
Just on a personal level.
Yeah. Well, I think I've experienced every possibility of motion moving through these cycles, and I think that's really what this experiential way is. It's the possibility of feeling every possible feeling that exists on this planet, to have every possible expression of a new way moving forward. I think it really highlights the ups and the downs and the highs and the lows, and the spirit that we can find in it, instead of the despair and the pain and the I the expectation, I think is what continues to kill me when I have these high expectations that I should be feeling a certain way, or it should be going a different way, or why did Trump get elected? He shouldn't have been elected. It's like these expectations that we hold really is the killer of this, of the feelings that we can experience in these new cycles.
Mm. Very true. Very true.
Thank you so much for being here. I'd love to have another conversation with you. I really appreciate your perspective, and I think we have, yeah, a good chemistry. How can people find you if they're listening to this and they want to connect with you more?
So my Instagram handle is HD by Z. I love to chat with people there. That's also my website. I welcome any and all feedback. So hello at HD by Z is my email address. If that's something that feels like a more official way of getting in touch with me. Like I said, I love coaching people. I love working with clients, and like my pride and joy is the beehive. We meet
Yeah.
once a week on Zoom. We look at charts. We talk about 2027 and anything that's really alive for us,
Mm,
because it's really about how to look at life through all different lenses.
mm,
So that's really where I feel like my
yeah.
my heart gets to fully shine.
Yeah. Yeah, I got the experience of speaking to that group, and what a passionate, amazing group of women you're leading on there. It's really an amazing thing you're doing. And I just love that you said, the 4% of the 4% are people who are going to get it, but they're going to be the guides that can really expand this
Mm.
their frequency, and this new consciousness that's coming into the world to everybody. And God, we're so lucky to meet this information and to have people like you leading and holding space. So thanks again.
Mm.
Appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Travis. I loved this conversation, and as always, I'm just in awe of everything that you're doing. So
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much. All right, till next time. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.